There was a report on the 12th of July in the New York Times, and Caolan Robertson has responded to that with a shocking analysis. And I think it's worth drawing your attention to both his comments and to the New York Times piece. And it exposes how Western journalism, even from a paper as significant as the New York Times, can unwittingly or even wittingly amplify Kremlin narratives under the guise of balance. The New York Times feature on Kursk is less reportage and more a cautionary tale. It's a case study in how embedded journalism conducted under authoritarian conditions can morph into the laundering of state propaganda. Nana Heitman's photo essay, brilliant photos, backed by reporters including Andrew Kramer and Anatoly Kurmanaev, purports to chronicle the horror of a war zone. What it unwittingly does, however, is replicate the voice of Moscow, often verbatim. As Caolan Robertson aptly observes, you do not embed with Russian troops without Moscow's blessing. You do not publish from Moscow without restraint. Nana Heitman's report from Kursk opens with a tableau of devastation. The fields were scattered with carcasses of cows and pigs and with the corpses of civilians and soldiers. It's haunting. But where is the attribution? Who caused the devastation? The report laments how Ukrainians turn this little sliver of Russia into a battlefield full of death and destruction. That passive construction is morally obscene. It forgets conveniently that Russia launched its invasion from Kursk, that Sumy, Bucha, Kharkiv, all bombarded from Russian soil, were war crimes long before Ukraine crossed the border. There's no equivalent framing of Russia's razing of Izium or Kherson's mass graves. No quotes from tortured Ukrainian priests were treated to sentimental accounts of Russian imams and Ahmad troops bringing elderly villagers to safety. The hypocrisy reeks. Robertson, who visited the same towns and villages last autumn, flatly contradicts the Times' claims. He reports locals who cycled through town, accepted aid from Ukrainian troops, confirmed the absence of brutality. And why the discrepancy? Because Robertson, unlike Heitman, wasn't escorted by the Akhman Battalion, a paramilitary unit notorious for its brutality in Chechnya. He didn't require Kremlin clearance. He interviewed civilians freely. The Times did not. More than that, I know this because I was talking to Caolan at the time. I remember calls from Caolan from the locations. Heitman's narrative is filled with unchallenged testimony from Russians blaming NATO, echoing Putin's talking points. They hit their own. Half our relatives are Ukrainian, says one woman. The implication Ukraine is at fault for defending itself. This is the false equivalence that journalism rooted in balance rather than truth perpetuates. It's not new. In the 1930s, the New York Times whitewashed Stalin's Golodomor with Walter Duranty's infamous claim that any report of a famine is today an exaggeration or malignant propaganda. The current report, however unintentionally, fits that legacy. It humanizes Russian soldiers while flattening Ukrainian resistance into an amorphous, damaging force. Robertson's footage shows civilians being helped by Ukrainian soldiers. The Times describes Ukrainian troops laying mines and traumatizing locals with patrols, with no corroborating evidence at all. As Robertson says, press freedom means you can challenge your sources. In Russia, you print what the state permits. The Times calls the deaths in Kursk unclear, yet the article contains testimonies and centers on testimonies that critically pin the blame on Ukraine. The article also reports unverified Russian government figures and anecdotes as facts. One quote claims 600 civilians are missing, based on a regional governor's statement, not an independent body. But even when atrocities are described, such as the body of a naked man found shot in a kitchen, there's no forensic investigation, no Ukrainian response, only innuendo. And the result is a moral flattening, as if Ukraine and Russia are brothers in a feud, not invader and defender. Robertson summarizes it aptly. This is not a story of two siblings quarreling. This is a war of conquest. And we have to ask, when the New York Times gives a platform to Kremlin-embedded reporting, what is the cost? Truth becomes collateral, sympathy is misplaced, and the name of neutrality, justice, in the name of neutrality, justice is obscured. It's obfuscation. Robertson's message is not anti-Russian, it's anti-lies. And he reminds us that the true front line is not just Kursk or Sumy, but in the newsrooms and the editing suites of New York, London, and Paris. The Times claims to report what's fit to print. Perhaps they should begin by asking, fit for whom?